pleasure to be here. I am going to focus with you guys on topic exploring the difference between Django's ORM and SQL and when to use which. So before I move on, I would like to ask a few questions, just so the people I'm talking to. So I would like to ask first, is there anyone here who has probably tried another programming language to build web applications before coming to Django? Or before coming to Python, then Python? Let me start from there. Okay, one person. Okay, alright. So, while you are using whatever language you are using, I believe you will have, there was a way you were interacting with your database. Right? Coming to Python, okay, now, how many of us are Django developers? This Django here? Oh, almost everyone. That's great. How many people are like new to Django? Okay. So, one thing about Django is that Django gives you this flexibility and this ability to do something easy, more than the way you have done is using some other programming languages. And that is what we are going to be discussing today. Talking about Django's ORM and SQL. For those who have tried that programming language, you definitely would know SQL. So Django's ORM and SQL, what are the differences between them, and when do you use which? About me, my name is Habeebullah Akorede. Habib is short for Habeebullah. Habeebullah is quite long. So Habib, I'm a software engineer and I build with Django. I enjoy working with databases, and that's because at some point in my life, I had a time when I was basically working as a database administrator. So I was basically more into databases, and coming back to back-end development and software engineering, I found working with Django, working with databases so interesting. Let's go into the discussion. Database. One thing we know about database is that database is basically the core of your web application. Especially if you are building an application that has very good functionalities, and the way you interact with your database also determines how your application works. So if you want to let your application work very fine, when we talk about the speed, talk about performance optimization, and all that, you have to be able to interact very well with your database. And the way you choose to interact with your database actually defines how your application works. Like I said earlier, coming to Django, Django gives you the opportunity to interact with the database in two ways, unlike when working with other frameworks or other programming languages. For people who have tried Flask doesn't have this opportunity, it doesn't give you this opportunity, unlike what Django is giving you. For Django developers, you get to have two ways to interact with your database. First one is using the Django object relational mapper, and that is the ORM. And the second one is using the raw SQL queries. Now let's go into understanding all of this. But the goal of this talk today is for us to understand the strengths and weaknesses of each approach and learn when to choose one over the other. Let's talk about Django ORM. ORM simply means object relational mapping, right? I was talking about ORM, say ORM is a layer of abstraction that lets you work with your database using Python objects and methods rather than writing SQL queries. In simple terms, ORM allows you to work with your database without having to write SQL queries all the time. Without you having to at times, many people as Python and Django developers at the beginning, you really don't have to start learning SQL queries before you can interact with your database because you have ORM, you have Django ORM. And one thing about Django ORM is that it's built in with what? With Django. How does ORM works? Look at this chart here. Your application is here, your database is there. You always need your application to interact with what? With the database. The easiest way that Django gives you is that it gives you the ORM. Ordinarily, the way we interact with databases is for you to write SQL queries for your database. Now, Django gives you the opportunity to use the ORM. With the ORM, you can easily interact and communicate with what? With the database. And in that means that you can easily use your own language. You understand Python, that is the language that you speak. And the database speaks another language, is SQL. So now you can easily use your own language to communicate with with the database in its own language without having to write its own language. So it simply handles the hard work of what? Of talking to the database in its language. And it basically turns your Python code into SQL queries for you, just like a translator. So it's basically translating your code, your Python code into SQL queries for you. What are the benefits of using Django's ORM? First is that Django's ORM is actually very developers friendly. It makes life very easy. You are using your normal Python syntax, and you don't have to always switch between Python and SQL all of the time. So it makes life very easy for you. That's one of the beauty of using Python generally, because Python is always very easy. So we're always here for easy. So that's one of the things Django ORM is giving us. So it makes life very easy for you. We're talking about productivity. It allows you to develop very faster than every other person will do. So because you don't have to always go back to write SQL anymore. So you're basically developing faster and you can easily maintain your application. We're talking about security. One of the beauty of Django ORM is that it has a built-in protection against SQL injection attacks. So normally if you're dealing with your your database using your SQL, you don't have to worry about SQL injection and security basically. So what Django ORM has all of this built in for you. You don't really have to worry about it. Just use Django ORM, attach it with your database and move on. And portability. One of the things that makes Django ORM so interesting is that it allows you to switch between between database backends, the database engines. If you like, if you are using probably MySQL in your project before and you want to switch to Postgres, you can easily switch your databases without having to maybe learn some extra syntax in Postgres or whatever. All you have to just do is set up your database and you are working fine. You can always interact with it with your ORM. And this is a good example. If you look at this, I'm assuming that we have a model called the book model. So I believe for those who understand Django, you understand what the model is. So I'm basically looking at this code here. You can easily query get the list of all books that are available using the first line. The second line, all books equals to book.objects.all. So that is how ORM works. So if you are going to do this in SQL, basically have to write select all from all of that. So then Python with the second line set allows you to filter a particular genre of book from the list of books that we have. So with that, all of this, it's easy. Just write your simple one-line code of Python and you're good. That is one of the things Django ORM does for you. Now let's talk about the other side. SQL. The reality is that as good as Django ORM is, as good as it is, it's not always perfect, right? And it is more like it has already been designed in a way. But at times you would want to always do your things your own way. I have one of my friends here who likes to do his things his own way. So you will have to do your thing your own way, and that is where using the raw SQL comes in. So you want to work with flexibility. You want to make your things more flexible, and that is when you can now think, okay, let's say I want to explore using the raw SQL. And one of the beauty of Django is that you can also write your raw SQL code inside of the Django code itself. So when I was working with databases, we have this way the place you write your database queries, your SQL queries and all of that. So one of the beauty of Django is that you can also write your raw SQL queries inside of your Django code. So why might you need to use raw SQL? So when you are dealing with complex queries that requires very specific optimized and intrinsic queries, so you might want to go into using your raw SQL. We are working with legacy code. Especially when probably you get to an organization where they have a legacy code, or maybe when you are building the legacy code, you definitely need to understand how SQL works. And when it comes to performance optimization is one of the key reasons why developers will always want to go back to SQL and leave ORM at some point, because it allows you to use maximum performance for critical sections of your application. And then we're talking about database-specific features. There are some features that SQL gives you that there's database-specific features that ORM does not give you. So that's one of the things you enjoy when you use SQL. And this is an example of using SQL in your Django code. So using the connection module, so you can basically use this code. You can look at line 4, see select star from, that's the normal SQL query. So select star from my app book where Django is, then the Python. So it's just a replica of what I did here on line 3 here. This is line 3, getting the Django called Python. And I did the same thing right here on line 3 here. So you can see how long it is. But the thing is, when you get to use this, is when you are dealing with queries that require some special flexibility for you, especially when you are dealing with joins in database and all of that. Now let's talk about the two. Let's put them side by side and let's see which one works best at each situation. So we look at ease of use, productivity, portability, performance, flexibility, and security. Ease of use. One thing you understand about Django's ORM from all that I've been saying before now is that ORM is quite easier for you to use because you are basically writing your Python code easily. So it makes it easy for you to use and more than SQL. More than SQL. Productivity. Django enhances productivity by reducing the boilerplate code and simplifying database interactions. So it makes you more productive. You have less time to interact to build your applications than having to start going back to SQL. Portability, I mentioned this earlier too, that Django's ORM ensures portability by being database agnostic. So it allows you to work with any kind of database engine that you're working with. Performance. So here I'm kind of biased. I said, so Django is good, but OSQL can be better when it comes to performance. So OSQL generally offers better performance for complex queries and large data sets. Flexibility. So like I said, flexibility is where SQL shines. That's where SQL shines for flexibility. So SQL provides greater flexibility by allowing the use of database-specific features and optimization. So when it comes to flexibility and optimization, that is where SQL shines. And then security. So like I said earlier, Django's ORM gives you better security against SQL injection by automatically escaping inputs that might affect your database. So these are some of the things you would understand about Django's ORM and OSQL. When do you choose Django's ORM over OSQL? When you are dealing with general development, when most application logic, code operation, the normal code operation can always be done with your SQL. You don't have to start with your ORM. You don't have to go back to SQL with your code operation. Simple to moderately complex queries. Rapid prototyping, so it gets your project off the ground quickly. So another thing is when it comes to team collaboration. So when you want to work with a team and you have to use what everybody can understand, and that is one of that's what bring you towards using Django's ORM. And when it comes to OSQL, when you choose OSQL, so when you talk about performance critical sections, when you talk about complex data manipulation, and this is quite critical because there are some points where your application gets to and you have a lot of data and you want to deal with that data where ORM might be very slow at that point and you might want to use SQL. And we don't talk about database specific operations, so leveraging some unique features of database engines, so you might want to go into using SQL at that point. Now, in conclusion, one of the things that is best advised when it comes to using Django's ORM and OSQL is that it's always good that you combine both if you are able to do that when you need it. So combining ORM and OSQL is often the most practical approach when it's necessary, and you need to leverage. You can always leverage the strength of both tools. So when it comes to combining ORM and OSQL, you need to understand when do you need it. You need to understand when do you do it, and that will allow you to choose, okay, let me combine both. And if you want to just use ORM, it's fine. If you want to use OSQL, it's also fine. However, okay, said you need to understand your need, just like I said, you need to understand your need. You need to choose the best tool that suits your project requirements. You don't just, since ORM is there and it's quite easy for you, for you to use. There are some situations where you would always want to just use your SQL easily from scratch, because it's depending on the weight of the project that you're working on, the kind of project that you're working on. And when it comes to optimizing, you have to optimize wisely. You don't over-optimize prematurely. So profile your application to identify bottlenecks before resorting to SQL. What this means is that when you're starting a project, when you're working on a project, the best way to use to do it is to start with your ORM. Use your ORM, but then when it comes to optimizing, when you want to optimize your work, then it can always go into what? Into using SQL. And you don't optimize prematurely. That is the best advice I can offer at this moment. So I think that is all I have for now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So any questions for him?
Preparing for my own talk. I was speaking some things as we were saying. So my name is Django, and well done for a talk. I was very interested in the raw queries we were speaking of, right? Okay, so if you're dealing with raw queries, okay, what are the best practices that you follow to ensure that it's efficient? Of course, if you talk about it being avoiding SQL injections, Django can do that for us already, but we also need to understand the best practices, efficient queries. Thank you.
Okay, just like you said, Django already gives you the ability to do some of these things, just like the SQL queries and security that you talked about. But one thing is, when you are using raw SQL, number one is for someone that wants to use raw SQL, they just go into using the SQL without learning SQL itself, without understanding how it works. You need to understand, to put some time into learning, right? So and then with that you understand what to do to
complex queries. That's very good, because sometimes if you don't understand SQL very much, you end up getting an SQL that is slower than the ORM. So before going down, you should also explore some of the capabilities Django has so far, using aggregation, annotation, selection related, and so on, to optimize your queries. And like you also mentioned rightly in your presentation, you said that premature optimization is the most of all evil. So in the real sense, you should send application to production and start experiencing bottlenecks before you start optimizing your queries. And before you even go to optimizing your queries, you should also consider optimizing your code itself, using ORM SQL, try to see if you can release it to linear time and so on. And then for those of us that are not Django users and are envying Django ORM, so I think there's Tortoise ORM also. So Tortoise ORM was inspired by Django ORM, so it works like Django ORM, and it's fully async. I don't know why they name it Tortoise. Tortoise is slow, but Tortoise ORM is fast, and it uses async also. So those are just my contributions. Thank you very much. Yeah? Tortoise ORM is just like ORM, just like a package. You can install it into an application. Yes. Flask, fast API, just so that I don't jump people like us. So that's it. Thank you.
Alright, thank you.
Any other question? Okay.
Yeah, I don't really know much about Django. I don't know about Django. I just hear about it. So I'm this guy that I wish I can know all the skills. I like to be sweet. So I don't do things. So I don't need any other person. So can I do that? Django, like front and back end.
Yes, you can do front end and back end in Django. That's
Very
one thing.
friendly.
Yeah, very friendly. I think my guy here talked about something like that during this talk. Yeah, HTML, where you can use HTML with a Django. And even without HTML, you can also build, there's something called templating in Django, where you can build your front end, your back end, all inside Django itself.
So will it crash or something?
No, it's not crash. If you do it well. Yeah. most there are applications that don't even deal with having to use all of these JavaScript frameworks for their front end. They also all of it on Django. That's on use of Django. That's why I love it. Yes, it's crazy.
Alright.
You want me to try it out.
That should be all. Or is there another person? Alright.